conversations from this side of the globe, and it's www.bayhillnews.net. It's about radical radio right around the world. Bigging up Monty this evening. He has been a source of strength, a tower of strength for so many of us. An example right here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines has to come in from the grassroots and really sticking with his craft, his skill. He picked up things along the way, went on training here and there, being able to be pushed and pulled, twisted and torn in every which direction, but he stuck at it. And he has one of the largest followings, as far as I am aware, when it comes to local radio stations. It's www.bayhillnews.net, and then you will put like a forward slash. You know, like when you have a little lie down line, the line lie down across, yeah, like that. Those grandparents who are listening to us for the first time, welcome aboard. Grandchildren, make sure you put on this radio station so that grandmothers and grandfathers are able to be informed as to what is happening. You are hearing the authentic songs from this nation. You're hearing the crowing of the we call it the crowing of the fowl, the crowing of the cock. Well, whether cock or pullet, you're hearing the fowls crow. You're hearing the hens or the roosters. You're hearing them crow. And again, that is indicating from us here in the Caribbean, part of the authentic sound of the Caribbean. St. Vincent and the Grenadines, just a plug-in for us as the tourism and the community-based tourism organizations around the place. St. Vincent and the Grenadines is the Caribbean we are looking for. Nonetheless, there are some burning issues that are happening here in St. Vincent, and we want to expose them. We want to do some recommendations as well, with the sole intention of improving the quality of service, the types of products we have to offer. They say expensive things come in small packages, and we are saying that we are small but expensive, very expensive. And we are proud to be Vincentians, Afro-Vincentians, call it how you will. We are proud to be St. Vincent and the Grenadines, to be born here, born and bred here. Many of us would have traveled all over the place. And when we get into these major organizations and associations elsewhere, we are counted among the brightest and the best. What can we do for our nation state? Besides persons like Monty and others who have radio stations here, we have bus drivers, we have lawyers, we have cooks, we have craftsmen, you name it. We have various persons of varying talents and skills and so on right here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So indeed, this is Bell the Nation, another radio program that, should give us a particular perspective on some of the politics of the day. And we aim to serve you, to provide you with the best in terms of guidance on the way forward to choosing the next best alternative for the politics or the political governance of this country. We are offering ourselves on that platform. We are known as the National Liberation Movement, and we will be coming to your community pretty soon. Look out for us. If we have not arrived at your doorstep as yet, call us, and we are just a phone call away. All right? Good. The topic for today is quite an interesting one. Wouldn't you say, Mr. Williams? Wouldn't you say it's quite an interesting one, this particular topic that we have earmarked for today?
Just another of those interesting things. This administration seems to, as you mentioned a lot of the time, they're there to solve the people, but it seems to me like they realize, and not like they don't realize, they don't care. Because at the end of the day, the law is the law. So the following the law has to be consistent. You can't want to be a guardian of the law, but
Mm-hmm.
also a pincher of peace in between. No make
Okay,
sense.
okay. I
That's more
hear
or less
you.
as from a political or legal term. It's more or less it can be illegal once there's enough
Mm-hmm.
evidence there to prove, and also
Mm-hmm.
it creates what we call, from a judicial perspective, a conflict
Mm-hmm.
of interest.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So the question that we have under consideration. Somebody reminded me that we had less than 5 minutes to deal with that particular press release that was sent to us in the last program. And so we've decided that we're going to tackle it. Why is the office of the clerk of the House of Assembly under scrutiny? And the scrutiny is basically what's the purpose of that? What is the purpose of scrutiny? When you scrutinize something, to ensure that persons, officers, and so on are held accountable for the decisions that they make on behalf of communities, on behalf of government, on behalf of an association. You scrutinize something, as the old people say. You remember that. You remember the word. You go shop, and then when you come back, your mommy start to scrutinize, take a critical observation or examination of whether or not you you bring back change. Huh? You
Mm.
did like plenty bread enough.
Well,
Huh?
well, in them time, nobody knows to scrutinize anybody and say that watch you with one eye.
Ah, well, that's the point. Watching you with one eye.
Watch you with
Yeah,
one eye. That's
yeah.
scrutinize. I was a big boys. You have to pray grassroots. And I watch you with one
Right,
eye,
George. Yes, they're watching you with one eye. So we want to look at this question from the layman's standpoint, where he sits and he's observing. What really going on in St. Vincent and Grenadines, boy? What really going on? I hear a lot of talk. The leader of the opposition write a big long letter. Darrison then the radio station attack. Me hear Miss Anderson talk about, yeah, watch it with one eye. What do all of these things really mean to the person who has just come into all of this and want to vote one of these days? Why is the office of the clerk of the House of Assembly under scrutiny? Maybe we could look at what the House of Assembly is. Maybe we could look at that first. You know, um, the thing about it is that the House has a total of 23 members thereabout, I think. Yes, about 23 members. 15 represent single member constituencies, and they are elected during a sort of first past the post kind of voting. They call it a plurality voting. And that big word. They're cutting it down for who sent me to school. There are persons who send us to school. So we went to university, they didn't go. So now the onus is on us to go back and teach our folks. So 6 of these 15 persons are known as senators and are appointed by the Governor General. Well, they say appointed by the Governor General, but the Governor General is really, he or she holds, in our case, it will be Dame Susan Duggan. Um, she and I taught at Girls High School. I was a member of staff. Well, she was a member of staff and so on. I know her in terms of, saying hello and nice lady. But she holds a position. Remember, we're dealing with the positions, the offices that these persons hold. Yes, so she was appointed by the Governor General, but the Governor General the senators rather appointed by this Governor General. Governor General doesn't say, okay, I'm appointing Mary Tom Jones. It is on the advice of the Prime Minister that these persons are, quote unquote, appointed. 4 senators are appointed to represent the governor, the government, and 2 to represent the opposition. So on the advice of the opposition leader, 2 names are submitted. On the advice of the prime minister, 4 names are appointed, are sent to her. And then, of course, they say you draw up instruments, meaning that you, grandmother, meaning that you sit down and you write a document to say it is hereby certified, it is hereby decree, however the big words are, that Mary Jones is now a senator. I had a sister who was once a senator, and so on. So those are then now presented to the general public at a duly called setting, and then they are sworn in, so to speak. One member as well for the House of Assembly is the Attorney General, who is appointed. The most recent appointment, we would have heard that he is Mr. Grenville Williams. Before that, we had Mr. Martin, John D. Martin, and so on. Then you have a member who is the Speaker. One member is the Speaker. We're dealing with the composition of the House of Assembly. And that Speaker is elected by the government members of the House in consultation with the opposition. And then the most recent elections to the House of Assembly, they were held on the 5th of November, 2020. And we are told that within the next 5 years, up to possibly the first quarter in 2026, the next general elections are constitutionally due. Big words again, meaning that according to the Constitution, it says every 5 years from day to date, when you really check it, you're supposed to have a general elections. But we are hearing all sorts of things that general elections, as we have seen in the past, or read in the past, that you will have like you may have, who name it, an elections, maybe a general election may be called before, or you may be called after. Not after, sorry, you may be called before the 5 years that is due. All right, but you notice something, that the office of the clerk of the House, yes, the composition now, we're dealing with the clerk of the House of Assembly. But follow me on this one, assembly.gov.vc, clerk of the House. You have Nicole Herbert. She is listed there still, Miss Nicole Herbert. Again, she was one of those girls who went to girls' high school in my day, and she's now retired. And therefore, in her stead, we had a new appointment, which is Mrs. Deborah Charles. So the question, therefore, is who or what is that office of the House of Assembly? Because that office is part and parcel of the composition, loosely, I should say, of the composition of Parliament. Let me read it before I get into trouble here. In the House itself, the clerk may be looked upon as its chief servant. Some people say clerk, some people say clerk. One of his or her great qualities is a love for the traditions of the house. And because of his or her experiences, he or she is advisor to the speaker in these respects. The clerk is also expected to assist in the interpretation of the rules of the House, because the House of Assembly, that is where Parliament sits, you have rules there. You just can't walk in there, dress anyhow, go in there and behave bad. You're stupid! Your head look big! Although sometimes you hear, and then the speaker has to say, order, order, and you don't tell them behave themselves. And so the clerk is also expected to assist in the interpretation of the rules of the House, to see that new members are properly inducted into the practices and procedures of the House, since new members can be thoroughly confused by these. Members, quote unquote, learning the ropes in Parliament is the responsibility of the clerk to a large measure. And in addition, except for the possession of a strong sense of humor, they must be able to laugh, and when those guys toss around a few words, they should be able to take a good laugh then. The qualities of a clerk are as expected of the speaker. That clerk must be patient. He must be trustworthy. He must have a strong character. He must be upright. persons within the community that he served must be able to look upon him. I say him, I use that in a general sense. I must be able to look upon him as being one who they can really point to and one who could hold their respect and so on. So the clerk may be regarded as secretary to parliament. Indeed, in some countries, he or she is called the secretary general. So the duties of the clerk are, and you have 8 of them listed. And I'm taking my time with this for us to get the context. The clerk must attend all sittings of the House, read the order or the agenda of the day, and whatever else is required to be read from the table, to sign all orders of the House, including any order of suspension and addresses and votes of thanks, to keep the minutes, to circulate these to members before the following meeting or sitting, to keep in safe custody all votes, records, bills, and other documents laid before the House, to prepare the agenda for a sitting of the House, to give due notice to members of the sitting of the House, and to ensure the dispatch of all documents for each meeting, and there's plenty of meetings, or for each meeting at least 7 days in advance. But apart from serving the House in such capacities, the clerk is a civil servant and heads the departments whose general day-to-day functions are similar in nature to those of other departments of government. And then Clement Noel was once a former clerk of the House of Assembly. And then you had Mrs. Teresa Adams. And of course, we had Nicole Herbert. And they would have served long time, so to speak. Now, we have a situation here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. But before we get into the situation, tell me something, Mr. Williams, from a layman standpoint, what jumps out at you from all that we have read so far in relation to the clerk of the House? Any major thing jumps out at you there? Major things jump out?
Well, there's several aspects. It all depends. And well, you're talking about experience.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Does this clerk have the experience as to what the law entails? Because at the end of the day, you have to begin somewhere. But when you talk about these senior roles,
Mm-hmm.
It is very important to have that experience. Because at the end of the day, you're dealing with very senior role in this country, and we want to make sure that we're not expecting perfection, but everything that take place should be within the confines of the law, and it should be done not only in the confine but on a professional level. So,
Okay.
because remember, when you're representing cities and Grenadines, especially where the world becomes so like a one-stop shop, as we speak, this information is carrying live. But say, for example, if you're not hearing it live, somebody can actually share parts of this program within nanoseconds. And
That
when we
is
say
true.
nanoseconds, within a jiffy, and when we say jiffy, the average person quick. So that is the part that because if you put somebody in a position that they're not qualified for, then we're open up to all sorts of issues. And I don't want it to be too direct, but not qualified to do a job that you've been assigned for, it cannot make a good situation worse.
I hear you. I hear you. Before I come back to answering or giving a counter view on seniority and qualification, a pause for a commercial pause. This is Belden Nation, the biggest contributions to conversations from this side of the globe. We aim to give you an accurate reflection, not just of how we feel, but if something comes to us as this letter has come, as this press release has been sent specifically to us to do a sort of analysis from our perspective, we seek to do our research and to give you our honest opinion. We're not judgmental. I hope we're not. But rather, we will bring information as we are seeing it from, and our, how to say, the benchmarks. We are actually going to look at the law, number one. Number two, we'll look at the person's qualifications, as you would have mentioned, whether or not seniority is involved and so on.
You want to take away my...
Hello? Yes, hello. Somebody try to call us there. Yes, go right ahead, please. Hello? Okay, I think we have lost that caller. Seniority. Mr. Williams, you mentioned seniority, but the position is now another female. As far as I am aware, this is her first role as the clerk of the House of Assembly. So given that it is her first stint, let me see from the other. Mrs. Teresa Adams, she was an assistant secretary, House of Assembly, 2nd of October, 1989. And then clerk, House of Assembly, she was appointed the 17th of November, 1989 to the 28th of February, 2002. So in terms of seniority, in Mrs. Teresa Adams' case, she was serving as assistant secretary within the same House of Assembly. Well, because they said no, they say / House of Assembly, HOA. So, but she was an assistant secretary. Remember, as well, the clerk is a civil servant. That's what this information is saying to us from assembly.gov.vc. So I'm going back to the books. The former clerk of the House of Assembly, Mr. Clement Noel, appointment of clerk, acting 5th of September 1975 to the 31st of December 1978. Clerk, House of Assembly, retirement 1979 to the 16th of November 1988. And then clerk of House of Assembly, he came back on contract the 17th of November 1988 up to and including the 2nd of January 1990. They didn't say when Nicole took over, but it is presumed that Nicole would have taken over sometime after that or before, sometime after 2002, thereabout. Sometime after that, Nicole was appointed, but I don't have that information as to when she was appointed clerk of the House of Assembly. The issue, though, is that you have to start from someplace. Isn't that so? How then would you get your experience? Don't you have to start from someplace before you are an experienced driver? You don't have to start someplace.
Yeah, but you bring, if you really want to actually create a good leader, you have them walk along.
Okay.
Somebody of a senior level, and you give them a little trinkets of opportunity to get a feel of the real thing. And even though when you get that guiding alongside, it's still not the same as when you've been a full-fledged nominee to perform the role. But at least you have a little feel of what it's like, because similar and same, they're two different. They're different. So, but if you just take someone and just throw them in the deep end, that is what I'm saying. I'm not saying that because some people can learn very quick, but when you're talking about these senior roles, it should be done in a manner that it doesn't jeopardize the person who make the selection and also the person who has been selected, because they're there to represent us.
Yeah, I like how you say that the person, because even before you learn to drive, they had to put you to get a little, a side steer then. You have to side steer until you're able
instructor. The
Yeah,
instructor is
yeah.
actually the one
Bring the
giving you the
instructor.
side step, unless if you have somebody else who can give you additional beyond, because the instructor is there for hour and it's a paid duty. So
Correct.
you always have somebody, and I like the analysis because when you learn to drive, whether even though you're some people very quick to learn, somebody have to show you the way. But when we're
Correct.
talking about these kind of job, you can't just throw somebody in a deep end like that. You nurture them so that when they reach to that level which you think they can, they're ready.
Okay. But here's something. When it comes to these jobs, I am sure that there has been some sort of handover, some sort of guidance that has been provided. I do not think that the Honorable Prime Minister and other members of cabinet would have just taken, it happened to be this Mrs. Charles, would have just taken and say, okay, tomorrow you're going by this thing, and next week I want you to. No, I'm sure they would have had the opportunity of putting her to sit down and say, okay, these are the books. This is the rule book. Read up the rule book for 1 week. Right, and that is way prior to making an announcement on radio. All right, okay, these are the rules of the house. You have to read. You see, okay, you put on your robe at such and such a time, and you smile. You see, you're going over there. I want you to smile, and so on. You see, over so you have to wave your hand. In other words, a series of discussions would have had to take place before you throw the person into the role. I remember serving abroad, and it's the same set of instructions that were given. And when they put me to sit down, and I was instructed as to where to look for files, how to do the filing system. I was instructed as to how to conduct interviews. Not that I didn't know, because I would have had several years in the public service as well as in the teaching profession prior to my selection and at that post, and I was able to learn quickly, because I like how you say in terms of being able to learn quickly. But there's this big thing now about, this particular individual should not be there and all of that. Let me pick up on the letter. Let me pick up on the letter. The letter says this: because the leader of the opposition, and you see, when you're opposing, and the other thing, before we get to the letter, you talk about qualifications. As far as I am aware, Mrs. Deborah Charles holds an LLB, that is a law degree. Not holding a law degree would be automatic qualification for the post, but she holds a law degree. That's a fact. And she has been a teacher, I think, for more than 20 years. And yes, the other thing too is that the current holder of the position is a political activist. And that is as far as I am aware. She's a mother of children and so on. But we received this, Mrs. Deborah Charles' appointment as Clerk of the House of Assembly. I write, and the person who is writing is the leader of the opposition, Dr. the Honorable Godwin Friday. I write concerning the appointment by the Public Service Commission, PSC, of Mrs. Deborah Charles to the position of Clerk of the House of Assembly. The appointment raises serious concerns among the members of the opposition regarding the impartiality, the professionalism, and the constitutional integrity of the office of the Clerk of the House. That must be addressed because the clerk is vital to the proper functioning of the House of Assembly. Grandmother, basically what this is saying is the members of the opposition are raising the issues as to whether Mrs. Charles will be impartial in her dealings with the members, all members of parliament, those members of her party, which is the Unity Labour Party, and those members of the opposition, which is the New Democratic Party. So Dr. Friday is raising that. They have sent this for us to analyze, and we are asking for your input from the general public. Remember, as far as I'm aware, we'd already have a scrutiny committee or a committee to scrutinize the selections and elections of these offices. So you be the judgment of that, general public. So the members of the opposition and the leader of the opposition is saying the appointment raises those issues. Impartiality, whether or not the individual is a professional or whether or not there is a compromise, a question about the constitutional integrity. Is it proper, according to the Constitution, that this person should be elected or selected as in the office of the clerk of the House of Assembly? Office of the Clerk of the House, the constitutional role. The Constitution of St. Vincent and the Grenadines provides in Section 35 that there shall be a Clerk of the House of Assembly, and that the office of the Clerk of the House and the offices of the members of his or her staff shall be public offices. As far as you're aware, is the office a public office? Mr. Williams.
It's a public office.
Yes, I said, as far as you're aware, is it a public office? Is this in other words, this what section did they quote? Hold on, let me see if me get my law right. Section 35 of the Constitution. Section 35, Section 33, Section 30. Section 35, Clerk of the House and his staff. And we could get this constituteproject.org. You could pull up the Constitution of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, that is CONSTITUTE project, PROJECT.org. There are some persons who have just indicated that they are following me on this. So I'm asking you to follow according to the Constitution. 1. Section 35, subsection 1. There shall be a clerk of the house. And 2. The office of the clerk of the house and the offices of the members of his staff shall be public offices. We go back to the letter. Standing Order 9 of the House of Assembly outlines the administrative duties of the clerk. To perform those duties appropriately, the holder of this office must not only be impartial, but must appear to be so. And then they were putting alongside the whole issue of the clerk of the house to the speaker of the house. Because Section 30 of the Constitution talks about the speaker. So that big word is a juxtapose, meaning, they liken it to the speaker and they place the significance of the non-partisan character of the clerk's office into proper constitutional perspective. Although the Constitution is silent, put it this way, as to really and truly whether the clerk of the house should be non-partisan, partisan, or it just say public office. But let me see what Section 30 of the Constitution says. Section 30 of the Constitution. Speaker, when the House first meets after any general election of representatives, or before it proceeds to the dispatch of any other business, it shall elect a person to be Speaker. And if the office of Speaker falls vacant at any time before the next dissolution of Parliament, if the person dead, they resign, or they have to, put them out of the house, basically, the House shall, as soon as practicable, elect another person to that office. Subsection 2. The Speaker may be elected either from among the members of the House who are not members of Cabinet or parliamentary secretaries, or from among persons who are not members of the House, provided that a person who is not a member of the House shall not be elected as Speaker if he is not a Commonwealth citizen, or B, he is a person disqualified to be elected or appointed as a representative or senator by virtue of subsection 1 of section 26 of the same Constitution, or of any law enacted in pursuance of subsection 2 or subsection 3 of that section. Basically, the person must not be, we mustn't disqualify a person from being a representative or a senator and so on, and therefore, the person must be a Commonwealth citizen. Yeah. And in other words, the person must fall into certain categories as a speaker. So too is this whole issue of the person who is the clerk of the House of Assembly. And so it goes on to say by section 30 of the Constitution, the Speaker may be elected either from among the members of the House who are not members of Cabinet, or a parliamentary secretary, or from among persons who are not members of the House. In the case of a person in the latter, he or she shall not be appointed to and shall vacate or leave the office if any circumstances arise that would cause him to be disqualified or to be elected or appointed as a representative by virtue of subsection 1 of section 26 of the Constitution, which includes holding or acting in any public office. Consequently, while on the one hand, the Constitution accommodates a partisan political activist that is functioning in the role of a speaker, on the other hand, the same law tells us, the same Constitution tells us that it frowns upon or it disapproves of such an operative functioning as the public office, as clerk, in the public office as clerk of the House, and also as of a public officer performing the role as Speaker. Very clear. And here it is. They go on to say this: clerk of the House, role in motion of no confidence. This requirement for political impartiality, in other words, the person must not be aligned to a political party, is practically critical to the constitutional role which is bestowed on the clerk of the House under section 47(2) of the Constitution, where if notice of a motion of no confidence in the government is signed by at least 3 representatives is given to the Speaker, and the Speaker fails to ensure that the House meets within 21 days of the notice and dispose of the motion. In other words, take a look at the motion, take a look at what is happening. The clerk of the House is mandated to summon a special meeting of the House at such time and place as he or she may specify for the purpose of debating and disposing of the motion. Recent experience has instructed lamentably the degree to which the equitable application of this function is essential to securing the integrity of our parliamentary democracy. Mr. Williams, you get me here? The role in motions of no confidence, the Constitution say section 47(2), subsection 2. So 47 and in a bracket say put 2. It says that A motion of no confidence in government can be signed by 3 representatives and given to the Speaker. In this case, is Ms. Rochelle Ford. And when the leader of the opposition, if the leader of the opposition, as he says they will do, to sign, they write a letter then. Grandmother, they write a letter and they put down and they say, look, we don't agree that in this case, Mrs. Deborah Charles should be the clerk of the House. Then some sort of action has to take place. You know, the speaker have to look at it. And when they say dispose of it, meaning that they have to sit down and talk about it and get a vote on it and so on. But an action called a rolling motion of no confidence can actually be started. Initiated means that the leader of the opposition is the one who will go forward and start, put the processes thing in place. And the first thing he do is that he, being the Honorable Godwin Friday, would have written to the press and say, this is where we got it. They sent it to us to say, this is exactly what is going to take place. Yeah. Yeah, Mr. Williams, your thoughts on that, please. Your thoughts.
Well,
You think it's a right?
there's several things there that, Does anybody, any of our listeners have submitted anything yet, or it hasn't get heat up yet? Hello? Hello? You hear me?
Sorry, I muted myself. What I was saying is 5 persons so far have indicated that they're listening.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think it's five persons are listening to our program, but rather 5 have indicated they are listening and they are following our reasoning.
Yeah, well, there's several things that actually need addressing. Is that, well, it's hard to really find somebody who does not associate with a political party. But what is important, very important, you're talking about somebody who can be impartial. I mean, knowing the way how this PM Gonsalve operates, it'd be suicidal for him not to put someone who would not be most likely appears to act in his favor. Because if you notice the way he operates is either his way or no way. Because I'm just shifting off a bit. We're talking about the appeal process with the mandatory vaccine that was administered to our fellow citizens. And look at the level of which he's gone to. So we have to also look at this selection very closely. I mean, knowing him, he's not going to put somebody there that he can't dictate the runnings. And what we want to really is to scrutinize, because this selection has already been made. So we need now, and I like the way how you read this section of the law that applies to this, is for us to scrutinize to see if the law has actually been followed thoroughly. So one of the main points you mentioned about it, would she be able to act impartial? That is one of the big questions. And if we have any listeners, it'd be nice for you to say something in regard to that question. So that is actually a big call. Would she be able to act impartial? Well, the personality part, that can be developed over time, but would she be able to act impartial? Would she be able, and that come back with the same impartiality, would she actually have the courage? Because if we have one of our highest in terms of decision-making citizens in the country and the PM challenge, would this lady be capable of actually standing up to the PM and make sure that the law is actually followed. It's in its entirety, and also the legal aspect of things would always be maintained. These are just two questions I would like to ask, and it'd be nice if we can have some engagement from the audience as well.
Can I come in here?
Okay. Oh, yes, please. Go right ahead.
The grounds that the leader of opposition and Daniel Cummins are arguing about. She's still the caretaker of a constituency. She was defeated by Daniel Cummins in the election, but she going into the house to rule over Daniel Cummins. That's what the argument the leader of opposition are fighting grounds they carrying about it. They have no
Okay.
problem with
So
because she's still the caretaker of a constituency.
Okay.
She was defeated by the same Daniel Cummins, and she going over the house to rule over him, who was defeated by him.
Okay.
Listen to
right.
you go to what the trade union leader said. They make a statement about it, and they say the same thing. It's not the qualification; it's the grounds they arguing about.
Okay. So I'm seeing that the appointment is of a partisan political activist. So we will read that piece. It says, thank you very much, Mr. Cupid. Thank you very much. The appointment, are you finished or you're raising another issue, please? Is that it? Okay, I think he has gone. The appointment is of a partisan political activist. And I read, the appointment of Mrs. Charles as Clerk of the House does not satisfy the appearance of impartiality and constitutional propriety. That is because, well, in other words, it ain't fit into what the Constitution calls for, and therefore this person is still a ULP political activist. The partisan political activist, grandmother, partisan political activist is basically saying that she belonged to the Unity Labour Party still. And the letter goes on to say that is because Mrs. Deborah Charles is unequivocally a political activist within the leadership of the Unity Labour Party, which is the governing party. The ULP's record of manipulating the processes of the House of Assembly over the years, it has held a majority of seats there, is widely regarded with justification as being cavalier at best and downright abusive at worst. Mrs. Charles contested as a candidate of the ULP and lost in West Kingstown seat to the opposition NDP sitting member, Honorable Daniel Cummins, in the 2020 general elections, a mere 2.5 years ago, and she remains the ULP's caretaker and potential candidate for West Kingstown. Furthermore, she was more recently functioning in the House as a government senator and, as such, a partisan member of the House of Assembly until the dissolution of Parliament leading up to the 2020 general elections. Accordingly, her appointment as Clerk of the House has the potential of undermining our democratic institutions and, as such, weakening our democracy processes. Mr. Williams, your thoughts?
Let me
read this little piece. That may help you. It is too recent for Mrs. Charles, having been replaced as a senator by the ULP, to now don the robe of Clerk of the House without raising serious doubts among reasonable people about her ability to perform in that role professionally and impartially, devoid of partisan political bias. And more specifically, it is simply not reasonable to expect members of the House, and especially of the opposition, to disregard Mrs. Charles's recent roles and continued political activism in the ULP, and now perceive her as a newly minted impartial holder of this public office. That's what the letter said. Yes, go ahead, please.
You see, just come back to, well, I first want to say thanks to Monty for that clarity and also shedding some light and pointing you direct to some of the main points. It's not to say others are not important, but and this is again we're talking about, I said it earlier, the conflict of interest. And what really amazed me is I still can't really understand why our people are scared of PM Gonsalve. I mean, sometimes you say don't go direct, but why not? Why are people are scared of, why are, not people, sorry, why are Vincent Shan, because I'm not scared of him. Because if I was, I would not be here. Right. Why are they scared of him? Because at the end of the day, the law is for the citizens of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and that included even visitors, because if you're visiting, you have to also uphold the law. So why is it that for too long we just allow PM Gonsalve to do whatever he like, and we seems to just be scared because the people are actually unhappy. There's a state of fear, you know, poverty is on the rise. All our grassroots industry have been destroyed in a very technical way. And now you're talking about the actual, because now if you are degrading the legal aspect of the country, that is like the backbone. So when you create a lawless country, are we surprised that St. Vincent is actually having an increase in crime to an extent that, and I'm not saying it to speak negative of the island. The reason why we are here is trying to address issues to get St. Vincent not exactly where it used to be, but propel it beyond what we think it can actually achieve in terms of global. I mean, well, we know we are a small country on the island, but still we have the potential. Look at Jamaica; it's a small island, but is you can hardly go anywhere and you don't know of Jamaica. We will not be able to really match Jamaica, because the reason that propelled Jamaica into that international platform, they have so many talented people who have come out of Jamaica and have hit it internationally. Recently, we have Usain Bolt, you have the Bob Marley, you have Marcus Garvey. So they have been blessed with very prominent people who have made it internationally and continue. And they are strong people as well. They are patriotic people and brave people. And I still can't understand. There's so many poor selection, there's so many injustices that continue go on in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and the keepers of the law appears to be the breakers of the law. And now there's just another one, another nail in the coffin. When are we going to rise up to PM Gonsalve and his administration and tell them that we have enough of you? You don't respect our people. You seem to not abiding by the law. And it's not about time to go. We have to get him out. You know, let us stop being diplomatic. It's time enough for we to nip things in the bud, because if we have to continue to allow this man to behave the way he's behaving, St. Vincent is going to find himself in a state where it will take a long time for us to repair, because the damage is so diverse and severe. We will recover, but is it time we're going to recover? Because at the end of the day, we are a country just being run by taxation, and no effort is being made to create any form of industry to actually help, not even the working class, but in terms of to revive the economy.
We have something like, I think it's six phases of, six phases of development or something and the other like that we have. It's like development start and it stop. It start and it stop. We are in a phase now, a so-called phase of development that is, we're not really sure where we're going now. Because with this high debt, this burden of debt upon our shoulders, plus you're here with the NIS story, 15% increase right away, the contributions. That is what one of the recommendations in a report. I didn't see the report yet, but somebody was reading it for me. And I saw some news clippings. The other thing, the report recommend that you're going to raise the retirement age to something like 67 years. What is moderation inside of this place. If persons have to wait until they nearly, well, when the Bible talk, 70, that is 3 years shy of your 70 appointed years upon the face of this earth. People have got to wake up and realize that it is not all fun and games, and it's not all, my grandmother say, all shine teeth, it's not laugh. We have got to get this, the education revolution, so-called. Grandchildren and grandmothers and grandfathers have to sit down and count the cost as to where we are in this whole scheme of development. I was speaking to an economist recently, and he was saying, look, people don't understand that 15% is immediate. Once the recommendation of the report is put in place. 15% with immediate contributions that you'll be making over a period of 10 years or something like that before another review is taking place. But in the meantime, people are going to be walking until the toenail and the fingernail and the eyelash drop out. I'm not talking about false eyelash, the real eyelash on them. We've got to put things in order, the Christians, the non-Christians, you name them, the categories of walkers in sin. Every single person, once you are of walking age, will feel the pinch. Plus, our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren that we have under our care. We've got to turn history upside down. Otherwise, history itself will condemn those of us who know and understand the economic development of St. Vincent. They understand econ better than you and me, Mr. Williams, and are keeping quiet. And I am calling upon our economists. I'm calling upon our legislature. I'm calling upon every single soul in St. Vincent, able-bodied, to turn this thing around. Otherwise, those who call themselves economists and are making projections and going abroad and borrowing all sorts of monies and saying that, okay, this is what St. Vincent is all about, and tying our hands and our feet to a debt burden that our great-grandchildren will have to repay. If we don't do something, I tell you, we are sliding really right down a slippery slope. And many of us have hit rock bottom already. We sit on our bottoms. This whole thing as well about saving in the credit unions. And so you notice how there are certain measures that are put in place for certain credit unions against others. The credit union movement must also look at these issues and decide that definitely they are going to take action. Action that will come to our members and sit down and tell us, look, this is what it is about. If in the leadership of some of our credit unions, if in the leadership you don't have economists, bring one on board. Sit us down and tell us where our dollar is going and whether or not we will be trapped within this debt burden, trapped within, because credit union have no shifting a little bit off of the target. We have no savings, no banks that we're saving with, save and accept. The same bank, National Bank of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, that has a high exposure of all of our monies here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And some people are taking note, others are not. And I'm saying, the economists of this country, you owe it to us to come back to us and tell us what we are facing. If we continue to allow the government on this trend that they are going, not only would we have issues like this from the House of Assembly, but St. Vincent and the Grenadines will be sold out, would be put out, would be shoved out, would be kicked out. Not just out of the economic cycle, but we will be standing in line, begging our bread. And worst case, a lot of us would die prematurely. Some die of grief, some die of starvation, and the other die of some other sort of story. But before we come back to this is Bell the Nation, the biggest contributions to conversations from this side of the globe. I want to thank you very much for those persons. Once again, most people this evening are actually listening and commending us for the program that is going on. So you say, besides others, we have another 15 persons that are listening. This state that they are listening, and basically, well, they wouldn't want to say enjoying, but they are understanding a little bit better as to what it is that we are explaining. So the crux of the matter, as Monty had just said, is the appointment of a partisan political activist. The question is unequivocally, yes, she is a partisan political activist. And as the letter that was seen from the Dr. Honorable Godwin Friday, the appointment of Mrs. Charles as clerk of the House, it does not satisfy the appearance of impartiality and constitutional propriety. In other words, it's against what the Constitution outline. If you really put her position, well, the position of the office of the clerk of the House, to that alongside the Speaker of the House, impartial, and it must satisfy the constitutional provision. The person, she is a political activist. She is still the caretaker of the constituency, was it of West Kingston? She still is, as far as is known. And we can check that, check it again. And I think those are the issues that are at the heart of the matter. And true, the role is one of a sort of administrative, an administrative role. And she has all these qualities: patient, trustworthy, strong character, and so on. She has qualifications, an LLB, like many of us in St. Vincent and Grenadines. There's nothing wrong with that. But what we're saying is that her duties would be compromised based on her level of involvement, current involvement in the politics of the day. Mr. Williams.
Well, as we say now, not only compromise, Dr. Charles, you're clearly seeing a conflict of interest right before your eyes. And we have to give credit to where it's due. So if something is unconstitutional, if it's illegal, we should not allow it to go ahead. So let us not really talk about the LLB or whatever. We are talking about the laws of the land.
Yeah, I'm hearing you.
Yeah, so I don't think those points are relevant about what academic qualification she holds. We are talking about the law, legislation of the law.
Yeah.
And then if you hold a LLB, you should also see yourself as a true leader, an upright person, and you can also decline it.
Yes,
so
you
even
can.
So it doesn't even make any sense, because when you talk about LLB, you're talking about the legal aspect of things. You don't expect anybody to know everything in terms of law, but it creates a lot of contradiction. And even PM Gonzalez himself, he has been considered a great lawyer, but it seems to me like he sees himself as an untouchable. And I'm just calling on our people, it's about time. You talk about the rollback revolution, we need to give it our own name, because we need to create another revolution to get you out of office.
I hear you. And that is the mind shift.
Going to do it legally, because when we talk about revolution, I know people quick to say, oh, you're planning an overthrow, but we are going to do it legally.
Mind shift. You call it a mind shift. A mind shift revolution, in the sense of the way how we think. And it is true that there are some people who don't read, and a lot of us, I shouldn't say some people, a lot of us, we don't take the time to sit down and read the newspaper and analyze what this thing means. And if you don't understand it, you call cousin Gerald and say, Cousin Gerald, what do you mean? What word reasonable? He goes, say, what do you mean? You don't know what reasonable mean? He said, let me read it, you. And the other thing too, our university graduates and others, they have a practice of reading. Used to, most of them, I should say, would have a practice of, whenever they do their degree, they would have a dictionary next to them. And that is advisable. And I am saying, you have dictionaries right now on your computers and on your laptops and your handheld devices. Understand it. Get a copy of the Constitution again and understand. Read and understand. If you don't understand something, ask somebody. I'm sure you have colleagues who will be able to ask. Just read and understand it. So it's a mind shift revolution. Don't sit down and say, okay, man, that thing used to happen long ago. And it happened again. Reach the place where you are going to be saying, one day or days gone by, that used to be a fixed mindset. A fixed mindset say, I am going to accept anything. I am going to accept this particular thing because it used to happen to me in my grandmother days and so on. We are in what century? 24th century? Huh? And therefore, there are things that our grandparents didn't understand. We must now understand it today. Long ago, daddy and them used to have donkey. It means therefore that I mustn't buy a car these days. Huh? Even if it's a $300 car. Well, you know what I mean, Mr. Williams. But the point is that we have got that same, take advantage of the revolution, the education revolution that we have had. Take advantage of that and sit down and analyze things for yourselves. In your communities, read. In your churches, understand what it is that is being fed to us. And let me tell you something. There are some leaders who would say certain things to you and laugh and hug you up. But look for hidden meanings, because it is what they don't say that they practice. You see, when my eyes open, and many of us fall prey to all of that sort of thing. Yeah, there is some guy, your hair look nice, girl, and it, you know, and so they hug your bus, kiss on your shoulder. Girl, and so when you do it, you shout. Grandmother said, is that all shine teeth is laugh? There are some leaders who have one goal, and that is to stay in power for as long as is necessary. And they continue to punch out your eyeballs. And you don't realize that until, wait, one morning you wake up, you can't see. And I am saying this particular issue is we must continue with this mind shift revolution. A change mindset, a mindset that says growth mindset, that this thing is possible. This is not the way we are going to think anymore. We are going to become entrepreneurs. We are going to be able to pay somebody else to work with us. Not everybody going to be entrepreneurs. There's some workers, some entrepreneurs. You're going to be able to sell your goods that way. You're able to access markets that way. You're able to look at the information that is sent to us from the opposition leader and dissect it, fleece it, dig it out, analyze it against the Constitution. What the Constitution says, you've got to read that. We can't do it for you. You've got to read that for yourself. Yes, please.
Just to add a bit of that, and I'll keep lamenting it, it's time enough for us to move away from the single income, because that is where government have control over us. You know, yes, you may not be an entrepreneur, but we all need to learn about investment. When I say investment, you don't have to talk about big companies. A man could actually want to open up a shop. You go to a solicitor, a lawyer, and you invest some money in it and get a return. So you don't always have to be in a big company. We could look grassroots. So it's time enough as well for we to start to look for opportunities. Let us just stop look for a job, because if you notice now, when somebody fire you, everything stop. So we need to, because when you come out here, investment is something that it's just standard. I'm not saying everybody, but it's just standard, that it's a language that you can have. But when you go home, it's just, boy, me can't get a job. You're not hearing anyone to say, boy, what other business opportunity out there? Let me come together and invest in something. And we have to think about multiple income streams. So when we talk about changing mindset, not only political, it has to be financial, it has to be militarily, it has to be holistically, because you can't know everything. But we have to change. Everything has to change. We need a complete revamp of our mindset. And we have to be fearless again. We were once fearless. So when you say our parents knew, but we were governed by fear, because remember, our great-great-grandparents, they were actually the gradual transitioning from that slave mindset. So the closer you are to that slave, that don't say slave, enslavement, the level of fear has increased. And it seems to me like we are actually reverting back to that same slave mindset because, I mean, come on. And I'll say it again. I'm sorry, I have no apology to it. PM Gonsalve is a remnant of those people who have enslaved our ancestors. And if you look at history, he is basically doing the same to us that we have actually, what we have actually encountered throughout the transatlantic slavery. And PM Gonsalve is a remnant of those people. And if you look at what's going on now, he is basically doing the same thing to us. And we need to really wake up. I'm going to say it as it is, without apology.
Watch
and
me.
it is sad to see our people are sitting back and allow this man to come back and put us back into a form of slavery. And it hurts.
Change our mindset. Look, Grenada and St. Vincent and the Grenadines recently, they inked a memorandum of understanding. And that MOU anticipates an increased technical collaboration in the agriculture sector, right? So the change mindset is this. You're not cussing out nobody, you look at it. What can we as farmers gain? You go to him. And
you see in Westminster, they cuss out each other in Westminster. But you cuss each other out legally. Cussing out is good. So you're telling a man what's on your mind. But as I'm saying it again, it hurts.
Right.
Because PM Gonsalve ancestors are the one who enslave us. And when you look at his action actually reflects those of his ancestors. And I'm telling you, I've said it before. Yes. Those of you who operate like the house slaves, you're going to pay the price.
I hear all of that. But hear me now, cuz it's very important that we change our mindset to a growth mindset. Yes, to a growth mindset to see how we can gain from the MOU between the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry, Fisheries, Rural Transformation, Industry, and Labor, right here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Them two fellas shake their hand. The MOU says that there is going to be now a working understanding between what it is that we can export and what it is Grenada can export to us, what we can export to Grenada. Farmers groups need to be mobilized and get on board with this. And if it is, as I have been hearing, that there are certain things that have happened in the past, which with dasheen production and how certain obstacles were placed in the way of farmers who wanted to export dasheen to certain places and bananas, ripe bananas to certain places. And I am saying if this is so, expose him and punish the Ministry of Agriculture, Minister of Agriculture, and this government, punish them by what? By voting them out of office. We've got to think differently. If you should think horizontally, think laterally. It's very important, and from our level, this is Mr. Thomas. You say we establish and consolidate what has been happening for a long time. We have just imported over 6,000 pounds of yams from St. Vincent. How many farmers were involved in that 6,000 pounds of yams? And so in Grenada, to provide planting materials for the farmers, a lot of planting material will also be coming from St. Vincent and will be supplied to Grenadian farmers for food security enhancement project. What are those things? We don't know yet. Farmers groups need to get on board. And instead of quarreling to say, oh, this is what the government do, and so on, get on board, sit down and decide, this is what we are doing. Take a proposal to the Minister of Agriculture. And if that ain't go through, we will shut down this country because you have a project going forward and the Minister of Agriculture standing in your way. Move him out of the way. Get on board, farmers, livestock owners,
It's about time. Grenada and us have always had, Trinidad has been one of our biggest, Barbados as well. And Grenada has always been, we have always have bilateral trade like Grenada. We shouldn't be buying no spice from anywhere else except it come from Grenada or whatever country. And Grenada is actually known to be the spice. Why is it that we don't have our original product and we do intertrade? Then we always have to have something, whether from Canada or America. Look, Grenada is right there, and Grenada produce a lot of quality products. And same way, so why is it that our neighbor just did that we don't even have a proper bilateral trade with Grenada? Why is it? We have Barbados, I know we do, but it's about time we up the game, and it's about time we start to go into diversification. It's
I hear
basically
you.
package our stuff and get the real return from it than when you always sell it as a raw material price. So we have to start to now work with our farmers and start to create grassroots market, because you have to start small in order to grow, and give our people the tools that they need, because we don't need have to sit back there, and nothing is wrong with working for somebody, because we need people in the office. But at the end of the day, we
Absolutely.
need to start to think about multiple income stream, and we need to get off this pride thing. And because you
Okay.
come back with a LLB or whatever you come back with, we still should
I,
connect with the land. Nothing is
absolutely.
wrong with that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I
What is
agree with
this
that.
thing about us when we come back with our masters and our doctorate? We feel like connecting with farming is a crime. I mean, how did we get to that mindset?
I don't think for everybody, eh? I don't think for everybody. But
No,
let
it's
me
not
just
for
pause there.
everybody. It's not for everybody,
Yeah,
but it is large
yeah.
scale. It is large
I,
scale.
okay. All right, we are very close to the end of the program for this evening. This is Bell the Nation, the biggest contribution to conversations from this side of the globe. We have had about 25 persons just, tabbing in, texting in to say that they have actually been listening to the program and it has been a worthwhile one. They weren't making an adverse comment as such, but rather they were listening to this educational program. So before we sign off today, um, indeed, we switch back on this from the letter of Dr. the Honorable Godwin Friday, leader of the opposition. Is indeed on the House. This is penultimate paragraph. That is a paragraph that comes before the last. Indeed, on the House of Assembly's website, it is also represented that the clerk is a civil servant and heads the departments whose general day-to-day functions are similar in nature to those of other departments of government. And you may hear, end of quote, you may hear the Prime Minister may come and may rationalize the fact that it doesn't say that it has to be a civil servant, and he may twist words and so on. But that has been a historical thing here. We have to listen carefully to his words. And then the Honorable Godwin Friday says this: therefore, the appointment of such a career civil servant as Clerk of the House would maintain constitutional integrity of the office, preserve the noble tradition of impartial appointments, and sustain public confidence in the office of Clerk of the House. And I think that is the root of the matter: impartiality and constitutional propriety. And those are some of and professionalism. Those are some of the key words that we extracted from the letter today. And the call from Dr. the Honorable Godwin Friday is saying, in light of the above, that they are urging that the decision to appoint Mrs. Charles to the position of Clerk of the House of Assembly be reconsidered and that appointment be revoked. That appointment be revoked. And of course, they went on to say, to do otherwise would erode public confidence in this, a big word, quintessential public office and in our related democratic institutions and principles. Mr. Williams, you have about just half a minute to say anything else.
I just want to say to our citizens, let us not fall asleep. Let us rise up and make a change for ourselves and our generation. We need to instill leadership and confidence and resilience into our next generation. And just want to say thanks to our sponsors. Bay Hill News, a double thank you to you, and our listeners, whether you're new or regular listeners, we thank you. And Dr. Charles as well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to join with you as well.
No, indeed. I am to thank you, Mr. Williams, for the manner in which you continue to challenge us and to guide us in your deliberations here on Bell the Nation. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we have almost come to the end of this program. And without further ado, I must say, He has shown you, O mortal, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you? to act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God. From Bella Nation, goodbye. Until next time.